Welcome to the Shapiro Law Firm Presents, a Facebook and YouTube live event. Today we're having a special holiday edition of our Q&A discussion, Options for Domestic Violence Victims.
So what is domestic violence? Oh, well, Amanda, you need to continue with your intro. Yeah, I'm Aaron Shapiro. That's Amanda Schaefer. She's going to tell you more of an intro.
Oh, is that what happened last time? Okay. Anyways, yes, so welcome. I'm Amanda Schaefer. This is Aaron Shapiro. He is my brother-in-law, my boss, and all around BFF. He's a great guy, and we've been doing this for 10 plus years now. Not the lives, but practicing law. We practice immigration, family, criminal, and even some civil defense litigation. If you got an adverse possession case, you send it to me. So we're here today to talk about keeping everybody safe for the holidays. And I know there's COVID going on right now, and so a lot of people might not be traveling for the holidays or having smaller get-togethers, but holidays historically have been a time where the rates of domestic violence kind of skyrocket. And that's because there's a lot of alcohol and a lot of family and stress, a lot of stress, right? The travel,
spending time together. People are already unhinged. Children are crazy. They're around you.
So we weren't going to do a Q&A, another Q&A in 2020, but after I was thinking about it the other day, and I'm like, this would be a good live because hopefully some of you out there have some questions for us, and we can give you some advice and help you have some peace of mind during this holiday season. And if you're not going to family, it doesn't mean that you can't ask us questions. We're here really to help everybody. We'll give it like a couple more minutes. People are still joining us. While we do that, I'm going to give our obligatory disclaimer that nothing we say here today forms an attorney-client relationship. This is general legal advice. If you do have specific questions about your own case that we can only give you general answers today, but we are available for hire, and our contact information will be scrolling across the screen all hour if we get that long log. In addition, I just want to remind everybody to like us and follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and wherever you find us so that you don't miss another Q&A live or any of our other lives.
The word like is a little pretentious. What if you don't like somebody, but you still want to follow their stuff?
So you press follow. You press follow.
Oh. All right.
Why I say like or follow.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You like us, but you don't have to. You can follow us. We have about the same number of likes and follows. I don't know why people choose one or the other, but that doesn't matter.
The reason I'm saying, I don't like somebody, but maybe I need their services.
Thank you, Jessica Shapiro, no relation. So today, like I said, we're talking about domestic violence and different types of options. And I know hopefully more people are rolling in here, but we'll get started because you can always rewind, and this will be posted after. But I'm hoping we have plenty of time for questions. I got a question from Aaron Shapiro, Esquire. What is domestic violence?
I'll take this one, Amanda. Thanks. Please. Domestic violence is a pattern of abusive behavior. And usually I find that it's about power or control over a person. And in the context that we are dealing with, normally the abuse is between husband or wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, that sort of a situation. Now,
but it can also be parent-child. It could be child-parent.
I had a call about that. A guy just called us this week about that question. A parent's abusing a child.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Complicated. Yeah. It can be verbal. It can manifest itself physically. It can be emotional. It can be a mix of all of the above, and it frequently is. It can be physical. It can be sexual. It can be about controlling people's money, but the money is going to control people's freedom. I don't like when people think like taking money is abuse. I don't generally think it is, because money has other motives as well. A lot of times I'm the first person that speaks with people when they call, and a lot of times people don't recognize that they've been victims of abuse in their relationships, or they don't know what they're supposed to do about it. So we have to take a few minutes to pinpoint what the abuse is. So,
Aaron, do you want to maybe we could do like an example of like, I'm a client calling you.
Okay.
And like what you would say.
All right. And you're an immigrant, so think of
I'm an immigrant too. So
think of some sort of a sample for me.
Okay. I'm not going to be corny and say hello like that, but
I have to be like.
This is very typical of a type of call that we get. So, ring, ring.
Hello. No, I'm joking. Hello.
Hi. I need to talk to a lawyer.
Well, hi. So I'm a lawyer.
Good.
My name is Aaron. What can I do for you? What's going on?
Well, I was born in, people think I'm Irish, so Ireland. I am married to a U.S. citizen, but I don't know, things aren't going too well. I don't know what to do.
How did you enter the country? That's always the first question I like to know.
That is
no matter what your situation is, because I also want to know how you've broken different rules with regards to getting in, even though we'll explain why it may not be relevant.
Visa waiver.
All right. So, and that might be annoying too sometimes, depending on what's going on, but currently it's okay. So what's going on with your husband?
Well,
are you living together?
Yeah. I don't know, like when we first got married, he treated me like so well. We used to go on dates all the time. He would.
Where did you meet him?
I met him through my sister's cousin's friend at a party.
In the United States?
Yeah. And it was about 5 years ago, and we dated, and so everything was great until we got married, and that was great. And obviously, I don't have a good job right now because I don't have work authorization. And when I got my work permit, he started acting different and like really getting on my case for not having a job. And I don't know, he just kind of is different now. He's just mean. I don't know.
Well, could constitute an abusive situation. Or do you feel safe?
What do you mean by safe?
Are you guys going to stay married? First question.
I love him.
You're going to stay married?
Yeah, it's just that, I don't know. I mean,
that's okay. I'm just wondering, because I like to think about the whole picture for the next couple of years.
I want to, but I mean, I'm starting to think maybe I shouldn't.
All right. Anyway, well, that's up to you. So, did you ever file for immigration?
Yeah, he filed for me, and like I said,
I mean, before him.
Oh, before him, no.
All right. So what did he file? 9130?
Yeah, and we're waiting for the interview. But I don't know how much more I can take.
Okay. Well, if you don't feel safe, you need to take care of yourself. You got to.
But I don't want to call the police.
You don't have to call the police, but you need to also remember that you need to be safe. You're obviously calling for a reason, so you're reaching out for help. That's definitely clear. Now, there's an option under the Violence Against Women's Act that you can file a petition for yourself. If you can show that you're married to a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident, your case is citizen, and that he's been abusive to you.
But he's never hit me.
Doesn't have to be physical, but it needs to really be abuse. These are very serious cases, and it's not appropriate to file them willy-nilly. You have to be serious. So the first steps are going to be getting you into some sort of, you got to start getting evidence, right? To prove any immigration case, you need evidence. Now, if your marriage is working and it's okay, sometimes people go through rocky situations, and maybe that's what this is. So if it is, and you go to the marriage interview and everything's good and the relationship's good, then it's, whatever. Fine. Sounds like maybe you had a rocky situation and things are going to work out. But don't stay married to get a green card. Just like you don't get married to get a green card, you don't stay married to get a green card. Because ultimately it ends up in you being abused.
What about my children?
What about your children?
Well, he filed for them too.
So you can file for them under the VAWA if you needed to. But we need to figure out if it's if it's appropriate. So one of the first steps is going to be you getting in touch with maybe some domestic violence or domestic abuse counseling or psychiatric help, things like this. I want you to make sure that you feel and you know that you're actually a victim of abuse. We're going to use that sort of evidence. The kind of evidence we might be able to get would be maybe letters from counselors, things showing that you've been going through counseling and that you're dealing with a real issue. Sometimes we get a psychiatric report. Sometimes a psychologist will write a letter, social workers. Hopefully it doesn't ever comes down to it, but if the police ever get involved in your situation, police reports. But you need to start building up evidence. We need to start thinking about whether it's going to constitute the kind of abuse that would support a VAWA case. So those are the first steps.
End scene. So basically, normally, the person would get a little more details about the abuse. I was just being very careful. Sometimes people don't want to talk about it over the phone, and that's okay. And we understand. Even with COVID, we do have people come into the office. Everybody has to wear a mask. We have to socially distance, of course. Our office is very safe and clean, and we prefer people not to come in if they don't have to. But these are really sensitive issues. And if you live with the person who's abusing you, obviously you might have a hard time, talking to us without them hearing. So
or being at work, we get it.
Work. So if in those situations, that's not a problem. We definitely prefer someone to come in to get help than to not come in because they think we're not having people.
Yeah, you can come in. We have plenty of room.
So yeah, that's generally how we screen it. That was more of an immigration focused call. We also get.
Oh, you're more like a DV call.
Yeah, we also get that. Those screenings are a little different. Like, you're not going to ask me in my first question, when did you enter the country?
I might.
Yeah, sure. No.
But, maybe I can get 2 clients out of 1.
When people call us, the first thing we generally ask things like, have you called the police? Have you filed for, in New York, it's called a family fence petition. That's to get an order of protection. Some people know it as a restraining order.
I like to ask if people feel safe.
Aaron, yeah, me too. And I had the other day, remember the client the other day she called me and put her phone on speakerphone to record her husband yelling at her. And I don't know what's going on. It's like 8:00 at night. I'm sitting there texting her, call the police. And then she's calling me and I'm like, hello. And she's just putting me on speaker. So I hang up, call the police. Then she takes a picture of he broke stuff and
break in through the window and broke through the conditioner and so through the wall in New York City.
I keep saying, call the police.
Not okay.
And then she goes, but he left. And I go, but he might come back.
Call the freaking cops.
To call the police.
They did.
And she finally, she eventually
I was impressed. The cop did a good report.
Yeah, she eventually did, but I was like, she says he threw the garbage all over the place. And I was like, yeah, this guy, you don't want him coming back. You want, if he comes back, the police know about it. So she did finally do it, but like so many other clients who call us, for one reason or another, they're either, if they're an immigrant, they might be afraid that they don't have legal immigration status. They don't want to.
I had a guy call me with a knife stuck in his head, top of his head.
Oh, I don't
he called me, and I was like, "Call an ambulance, dude. What's wrong with you?"
Wow.
He's like, Shapiro, I did not know. Call an ambulance. And I was like, take the knife out. Then you'll spurt blood all over the place. Because I used to be in AT, and that was like rule number 1.
People are very afraid of that, and
bleeding out, yeah.
And that's actually one of the reasons that we also wanted to do this today is people always need to be told and reminded about what their rights are. You have a right to be safe in your own home.
And that they're not the bad guy. The victim is not the bad guy.
You're not the bad guy. And you have a right to not be abused. You have a right to call the police and get help without having to worry about yourself getting in trouble.
Yeah, tomorrow we're going to do Kung Fu.
You know, that could be one of the coping strategies we talk about. But, you know, that what's just important to just always remember that there are systems out there, like the court system, like the police, the law enforcement, that is designed to help people who, hi Lambert, thanks for watching. As always, of course. But they're there to help you. And we don't want people to forget that, like I said, especially now, even though we're going in the holiday season and things are shutting down, the courts for like criminal are still open.
No, criminals are still doing crime.
I don't know if they're open. Yeah, well, I know that. The family courts only close like Christmas Day and maybe Eve Day. So, you know, you don't have to wait until after the new year. You know, there are attorney offices that shut down. We're around.
I was surprised.
We
should
I've
shut
seen
down.
a lot of offices. We should shut down.
We should be shut
No, Aaron, I don't think we'd ever actually shut down completely for like a week. I don't see that happening. But
no, I take my cell phone.
Yeah, we have our cell phones. So anyways, the point is, you know, there are options and they're not all criminal. And that's the kind of the next thing that Tanya, hello. Thank you for joining us. And so one of the things I wanted to also get into today, and by the way, if you're watching, thank you. And please feel free to ask us any questions you have. If you want to ask anonymously, you can like email us or something. I'm trying to monitor. We'll do our best to get your questions, but don't be shy. We're here to help. So yes, there are three main avenues in New York, and we're talking because we practice in New York. We're going to talk about New York a little. All the other states are similar. They have different laws, but they're generally, they have the same types of protections available, just a little different in how you go about getting them. So we talked about calling the police. That's obviously option number one. And it is the option you choose if you are in imminent danger or in any way, shape, or form. If there's any physical violence, I really highly, strongly urge you to call the police. But like we said, there's always reasons people don't want to. It could be because they don't want to get themselves in trouble. They don't want to get their significant other in trouble.
People think they're going to get in trouble with immigration.
Right, that's what we talked about. Immigration, then they don't want
supposed to be true.
Can you do another role play? Oh, Jessica Shapiro, no relation, wants to do another role play. You want to do a domestic violence intake call? Well, think about it while I'll continue to explain the legal options, and we'll
like a gruesome double murder.
No, we're doing domestic violence. Well, I mean, that unfortunately could turn into that, but no, I mean.
Oh, there was one up the road from us a few years ago where the guy was like abusing his elderly mother, and he went crazy and he killed her and he set his whole house on fire.
I remember that.
They rebuilt a humongous mansion on the property, and it looks horrendous.
Well, that's beside the point, but
that's all the way up to the other house. It's ridiculous.
That is an example of it going to the extreme, but it can very quickly escalate.
Yeah, well, you know how it goes. Like you're living with your mom, and you're thinking, okay, she's going to die. I'm going to get the house, and then it's 35 years later, and she's not good.
Aaron, well,
South threatening the other with deportation. That's common.
Oh,
that's not okay.
Yes, you want to talk about that.
Here's the reason why.
That is common, actually.
For one thing, let's go back to the first thing I said about domestic violence and abuse. It's about control. Now, why is deportation a big deal? Because it's controlling where you physically can be and how comfortable you are in the place where you're living or where your family is or where you want to be or whatever. So if someone says, look, I control where you live, I'm going to get you deported, then they can do whatever they want to because the harm is very high.
It's you know what it's similar to, like a teacher like a student relationship, or like a prison guard prisoner where there's one person in a position of power and the other person like feels can feel that they have to do whatever that other person says because something is threatened, something is at risk.
There's a court case about this from about 2 years ago that I read, Amanda. It's on the Ayla thing. But basically, the abuser's most powerful tool is the threat of deportation.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, a tool could be beating you, right? Or raping someone. Or we had a case locking someone in a room.
What, with a bucket for the bathroom?
Right. Yeah, but it's a very big deal. It's very scary. I don't want to mention anymore because it's a serious time. Maybe she listens.
No, I'm not joking about it. That was
it's really crazy.
Client, the only thing I'll say is that this client was one of those clients who didn't even know she was abused at first.
Yeah.
Like she couldn't believe it. And like we changed her whole entire way of thinking when we were like, no, that is not normal. Like,
we had a client who was a victim of abuse and his wife was arranging to hurt him and rob him and jump him. And she did with other criminals. Remember that?
He got maced.
At a bus stop.
I talked about it.
Told him, go to the cops. We got him his papers based on this.
No, I talked about his case last week or something. Tanya, how do you know if you fall in that category? Which category?
Abused. It's a good question.
If you fall into the abused category.
It's very complicated, right? If you're asking, then you probably are, for one.
No,
not you. If someone is asking, am I a victim of abuse?
Am I a victim of
abuse? Like shit
right.
and he beats me or whatever, then yeah, probably is a good question. Because people don't ever ask. They don't start to feel that way unless it was probably true. And it's probably super common.
You also have to trust your own instinct. When something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. And don't be afraid to talk about it. Like, find anybody that you feel comfortable with. If you think that there's certain red flags that come up that you're like, this doesn't seem right, it probably isn't. So when you're in love with somebody or you think you're in love with somebody, you tend to not see the bad things. Like, have you ever heard like that psychologists are like the craziest of people out there? You ever hear about? Okay,
no,
whatever.
No. I was thinking the term the rose-colored glasses thing.
Well, yeah, but I don't like that one that much. But the point is that psychologists could sit there all day and diagnose person after person perfectly, but when it comes to themselves, forget it. And it's like, maybe I'm wrong about people knowing of hearing that. Maybe a psychologist told me that once. I don't know. But point is, a lot of times people in their own relationships don't see it. So another thing I think is important that and is a really strong sign that you might be abused is if your spouse or significant other is isolating you from family and friends. That is like honestly almost number one on my list because it's so subtle that people don't necessarily think like, I hear this all the time. Oh, well, maybe he just doesn't like my boyfriend because, he gets angry sometimes, but, he just had a hard day at work. And like, they don't really want to hang out with us anymore because of this or that of what he's been doing. And those warning signs are probably like the most common ignored because people want to convince themselves that it's not true. And I'm not talking about one family member. I'm talking about if like your friends, your family, you start losing them or, they stop talking to you or
isolation is the term.
Yeah, exactly. Because it never starts off with a punch in the face.
Sometimes.
No, it doesn't because you don't get into the relationship and fall in love or whatever the case may be. But if unless you like being punched in the face, it doesn't get started that way. So it's always going to kind of creep up on you. I've never had a client say to me that they married a person that they thought was going to be abusive. Like you never think, or if they are, it's just a one-time thing. That's not.
Or they're going to get better.
Yeah.
Or they're going to change.
But you talk to people. There's so many people are still across this country, across the world, are afraid to talk about it. The more you can talk about things, when something doesn't feel right, when it's not sitting right, talk about it, and you might realize, just like when people call us, they're calling us for a reason. They just don't know what the reason is. Right. What are you looking at, Aaron?
An article about a murder.
Yeah, well, our goal here today and on a daily basis when we help people in these situations is that it never gets to a murder like that. It never gets to our clients being physically harmed. And one of the, the most important things Aaron said, he always asks people if they're safe. I always, make sure I ask them, well, where are you staying? If they need, like, there are like places like shelters and stuff that you can go to. Like, just because you have nowhere to sleep does not mean you have to stay in that place. I'll be like, call your family, call your friends, call this number. They might be able to give you shelter. If your significant other left the house, but he or she knows where it is and can get in, I tell them to change the locks. The places help with that even. But if you can move, you're going to want to move from your abuser. And another big thing to do is to cut off contact. Like, I know today people can contact in so many different ways. There's so many different outlets. But if you don't need to be in contact with someone who abuses you. There's really, honestly, no reason. If you decide to leave, and I know I'm kind of talking in a circle, but it makes me think about VAWA. And a lot of what people say about VAWA to me a lot is like that they don't want to leave because now they think that they can't get a green card or something. And that's not true. You can. So there shouldn't be any reason why you have to stay with someone abusive. What are you looking at, Aaron?
Just you. Now. I told you I was reading an article about a murder or homicide, looking for something. Does anybody have any questions about abuse? Because, otherwise.
We could keep talking.
That's abusive.
It would be. Do you have, did you think of another call to show people?
No.
No?
No.
I can't think
because it almost never, I don't know. I just don't want to call up with a fake phone call for you.
Well,
I can't think of anything. What am I doing? It's complicated.
It's true. Well, I wanted to talk also a little bit about what happens if you go the criminal route to protect yourself versus the family route. Just to give you, well, if you call the police versus filing a family offense petition, what the difference is. It's very different.
It's a different thing, but yeah.
Yeah, but you get orders of protection both ways, right? And those orders of protection are equal in value in the sense of if there's a violation, you call the cops and that person should get arrested. But the process in obtaining them and your participation in the events are completely different. So in the criminal avenue, obviously it starts with somebody reporting something to the police. Usually it's the victim. There is usually an arrest, although they can just make a report, but there's usually an arrest and then some charges. And something we see a lot is when the victim doesn't want to push forward with the charges, like I want to drop the charges, they tell the prosecutor type of thing. That can make it hard for them to prosecute a case. But if you are a victim, you should participate, because I always tell clients this too. If this person is abusing you, this person's abusing someone else. So abusers do not just abuse one person. Abusers abuse for many reasons. A lot of times someone who is abused, who is an abuser, was abused when he or she was younger. There's some type of trauma in that person's life. So it's not something that it's a one-time thing. And that's also why we say that if someone like hits you once, it's good. There's going to be a second time, because this isn't something that just happens. This is a part of someone's character. And that's what makes it so difficult for people too in that regard. What was I saying about, I got off track, the criminal. Yeah. So in the criminal context, the person you call the cops on your abuser is the defendant. You are not a party to the case at all. You're just a victim / witness. So your only participation would be giving testimony, basically, as opposed to the family court, where you're actually yourself filing the petition, and you're the petitioner, and your abuser is the respondent. With family court, you'll generally get a temporary order of protection first, and that has the same effect of a final order in how it protects you. It's just temporary as opposed to a longer period of time. It's temporary to the next court date. The first day you go to court to file, if the judge thinks you meet the standard, then you'll get one that day. Hold on, we got a question here. You came in the country. Oh, wait, I learned how to put these up. There we go. In the country and overstay, but meet someone.
Yeah, you need to be married.
Well, hold on. There's a bunch of different things in that question. It's has nothing to do with DACA. That's the first.
DACA. Well, the person's not married. He means VAWA.
Oh, VAWA.
Yeah, you got to be married.
Well, there is another type of visa. We're not talking about that today, really, but there's the
no.
If your rape falls under U visa, what are you talking about?
If they're going to support it, it's going to be very complicated to get there. Rape? Did they say rape?
Yeah, I've looked this up before.
No, not rape. I'm talking about the person's question.
No, the person's question is sexually abused.
It's going to be very hard, I think, for that to happen.
But it depends what you mean by sexually abused. That covers a wide.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
you could talk about it and maybe if the prosecution office will do it, maybe, I don't know.
Certain violent crimes.
But yeah, for VAWA you need to be married.
VAWA, you need to be married, or even if it's not valid, but a reasonable person would have believed they're married. Like, we've had some people come in who think they're married, but are actually not married because their marriage is invalid because they were never divorced. That happens. Also for VAWA, if you're married to your abuser and then you get divorced, you have 2 years from the date of the divorce being final to file for VAWA. So you don't have to stay married. And you can if you file VAWA, you can get divorced after. The remarry, there's a thing about you can remarry when you get the green card. We've looked at this before.
What'd you say?
Someone who applied for VAWA.
Yeah.
They marry someone else. They get divorced and then they get remarried. I know there's a certain point where it can affect it. I think.
No, I've never heard about that one.
We've
if you marry before the approval is going to be denied.
Right. Okay. So that's what it is. I knew there was
the approval. No.
No, after the approval it's fine. Before the approval it's not. That's what the law says.
Yeah.
So, yes, that's a good question. But DACA, if you are meaning DACA, not VAWA.
DACA is not VAWA.
DACA has nothing to do with abuse.
No, that's deferred action for childhood arrivals.
Right. So then with the family court, you either are a appointed attorney if you can't afford one. And in the criminal court, you can have an attorney as a victim if needed. But, like I said, you're not going to be overly involved with the day-to-day ongoings of the court. But in both situations, there potentially could be a trial at the end. Although in criminal court, it's like 99% of the cases do not go to trial. They do some type of plea or it's dismissed. In family court, either you're going to settle, and what your settlement is going to be is, I'm going to withdraw the petition. This person's going to admit they did everything they were wrong and accept a final order. This person's not going to admit any fault at all and accept a final order. That's pretty much the only options at the settlement agreement or settlement in a settlement agreement for family offense petition. If you go to trial, the purpose is to see if you can get a final order of protection. So if you prove So in criminal court, you have to prove like beyond a reasonable doubt, 99.999%. Well, not you, the prosecution. In family court, it's a 51% preponderance of the evidence standard. So you have a much lesser burden of proof in the family court. It doesn't necessarily mean it's it's a little easier in that sense, but you can't just make things up, of course. And because a lot of it is he said, she said, but you're going to have to testify under oath if you're going to trial about what happened. And we bring in text messages and emails, witnesses. We bring in whoever we have to show the court that, to back you up, or, we represent people on both sides for this, because there's no prosecution. So, sometimes we have to prove that the client didn't do it. And we do that just as much. Not that just as much. I didn't say that right. There's not that equal the number of fake claims at all. I mean, we represent people on both sides just as much of it. So it's just different. But you're going to get, obviously, in the family court context, the person's probably not going to jail. Your abuser. They can be referred to the criminal court from the family court, but that's only going to happen in very serious, like, cases like a murder or something. For the average domestic violence case, you have every right to also go to the criminal court, to go to the police and the family court, but it's not going to necessarily be referred from the family court to the criminal court unless it's like something really serious. Anything to add there, Aaron?
No.
Do you think one avenue is better than the other?
Different.
Is there anything in particular about it?
Yeah, you're going to call a crime is about being prosecuted for a crime. It's a different thing.
I know, but I'm talking about.
Talking about what?
When somebody calls you and says, "What should I do?" Is there anything in particular that you ask them that would lead you to say you like?
Usually, when people call, it's not the appropriate time to go to the police about a DV issue. It's normally the wrong time. If you're actually getting attacked at that moment, you call the police. If something happened a few weeks ago and you go to the cops, they're not going to hear from you. There's nothing they can do.
Well, again, it depends, because I think when there's physical violence.
Yeah, it depends, obviously, on the.
Yeah.
This is a dumb question. It's too broad.
All right.
The answer is it's very complicated. Every case is different. It's way too broad, and you shouldn't confound family court and criminal. The consequences are completely different. One ends up in a felony that ruins someone's life completely and changes everything for that person, and one of them is orders of protection that are used for different things. And there's no more we should discuss about it in broad terms.
All right.
Very.
Now, another scenario I just want to talk about, and then if you guys don't have questions, I guess we'll wrap up. But we didn't talk about I-751s, and that we talked about someone trying to get a green card who's being abused. But sometimes, there are certain points in a relationship when things start to go bad. And like these points, I could put on a timeline for you. And all of our clients fall somewhere on this timeline. Sometimes it's after the marriage, sometimes it's after applying for an immigration benefit, sometimes it's after getting the green card, sometimes it's after the green card interview. So on all of these points, like these will be turning points where when I'm reading someone's statement, it's like, and then after the interview, he started acting weird or something. So when you're married for less than 2 years and you get a green card, then you get a conditional green card, which is only valid for 2 years. And 3 months before the 2-year anniversary of having your conditional green card, you have to file what's called a petition to remove conditions on residency, or Form I-751. And you're basically showing immigration, look, we're still married, we're still living together, this is a real relationship, please remove the conditions and give me full permanent residency. And, at this point, you've been married at least 2 years. The statistics say that many marriages fall apart earlier on, And if that happens, you get a divorce, and you can self-petition for the I-751, and you still have to prove your marriage is real, but your spouse doesn't have to participate in the process, and you just show them, look, here's my divorce. But there's another option for someone whose spouse started abusing them. And just to be clear, the abuse could have started at any point. The abuse didn't have to start after getting the green card. You just might not have realized it, come to terms with it, sought help. But for whatever reason, you were able to stay with the person to get the conditional green card, and then the abuse escalated, or you had enough of it, whatever the case may be. You also do not have to stay with that person, even if you've already filed an I-751 with your spouse, because those take like a year and a half these days to adjudicate. You're not stuck in that situation for a year and a half. Fortunately, there's something similar with the VAWA, is the abuse waiver for the I-751. And it's similar types of evidence we submit for both. You still have to prove your good faith marriage, but there's a little bit more leeway if you're lacking certain joint financial documents, because as Aaron mentioned earlier, a lot of this is about control. And so something common that we often see is when once the U.S. citizen or permanent resident spouse won't add the other person to a joint bank account, or we'll go get that, I'll add you to my health insurance, and then they never do. That they don't want to put anything in the immigrant's name to make the immigrant more dependent on them. And that's like a huge thing we see with abuse cases. Mm. So like I said, there's a little more leeway, and we have to explain it all. But then we also have the same abuse evidence, which includes court records, court orders, police reports, anything related to a criminal case, photographs. I talked about this today on the Notable Approval Live I did, that you might, if you are physically injured, seriously go to the doctor or the emergency room. I can't stress that enough, but there are reasons people have for not wanting to go that will not preclude you from filing an abuse waiver for VAWA. But take pictures of the physical abuse, document it, tell somebody. Like, even if you're texting your friend, he just hit me, it's called a present sense impression. That gives us that we could say, look, on this date, at this time, this person texted this person that they were being beaten, or they're scared for their life. And that's good evidence. So you want to make sure you document it. And again, if you have any feeling whatsoever that something isn't right, that something's wrong in the relationship, or you're not being treated properly, let someone know, document it, because a lot of people don't always realize it, and then don't have what they need to prove things down the road. But we are very good at filling in gaps, and we fill in gaps with your statement, what the truth is. If you're honest, we can help you, and if you're not honest, we can only do what we can do. And I'm a little bitter about a lack of honesty today from somebody. Lost my smile. But so that's the nice thing about the VAWA, the Violence Against Women's Act law in general. And I don't think I mentioned this before, but it is called Violence Against Women's Act, but it applies equally to men and women, wherever your gender identity is. You could be for a same-sex couple. There's no discrimination in that sense of the law. So don't be afraid. We've had plenty of male clients apply for VAWA and for I-751 waivers. And I don't find it any more difficult than I do for the women. A lot of men are a little reluctant at first, but we've had pretty good success with the men too, right, Aaron?
Yeah.
But I know it's hard because a lot of people, men don't always want to accept it or come forward, or they think that it doesn't make them as manly. It doesn't matter who you are. What matters is that nobody should be abused. Nobody has to be abused. And even if it's psychological, we've had males with only psychological. We see a lot of extortion. That fits into the story of abuse. And by extortion, I mean, Aaron, give me $1,000 or I'm not going to the interview with you type of thing. That alone won't do it. But as part of a bigger picture, a pattern of abuse, a pattern of control, that's how we talk about it. So the abuse waivers, they do basically the same thing. Instead of getting you the 2-year green card, well, you don't get a 2-year when you do the VAWA, but you get a 10-year anyway. But you then get your 10-year. And then whether you did the VAWA or you did an abuse waiver, what's also nice is if your spouse was a U.S. citizen, then even though you're not living with your spouse and you're not with your spouse, you will be eligible for citizenship after 3 years instead of waiting the full 5 years. And that is the same as if you were still married and living with your spouse. And I think they do that to not penalize people who apply for VAWA or apply for abuse waiver, who maybe don't end up not doing it because they want to get their citizenship faster. So again, that's another reason. That is another reason to cross off your list of why you shouldn't leave the relationship, because you could stay on that same track, so to speak. Okay. Well, I mean, I can always keep talking, but I don't want to bore you guys to death. Does anyone have any other questions? If not, we'll wrap it up. I know people are excited for Santa to come. Yeah.
Yo, I had a question.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
How in the hell is DHS okay with this guy flying a sled across the border without papers?
It's actually a good question.
Yeah, like this dude's going to fly across the border and land, and Trump's like, yeah, I'm cool with that. Like, come on, priorities, people.
It's true. Not only that, breaking an entry.
Oh, duh. Like, that's not federal, though. That's local.
It is interstate commerce. He goes from
commerce. I guess he's bringing untaxed goods and giving them to kids.
There's another thing. Yeah, no.
People should be paying income tax on Christmas presents. And on that note, good night. Lock it up.
All right. Well, Aaron's out. So everybody, I will say goodbye for him, I guess. Thank you for watching. And don't forget to like us and follow us on Facebook and YouTube, Twitter, all that, Instagram. We will be back in January with another Q&A discussion. We hope you all will join us then. Everybody, please have a happy and safe holiday. Like I said, if at any point you need help, you call the police if you're at risk, and reach out to people that you can talk to. And stay safe. Stay safe, everybody. Stay away from COVID. Socially distance. Wear your masks. And we will see you next year. Thanks for watching.